Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. President Biden is sticking to the deadline for withdrawing U.S. troops from Afghanistan by the end of the month. Evacuation efforts are ramping up and reports show unsanitary conditions at a base housing Afghan evacuees. Over 200 planes and helicopters and 75,000 military vehicles. The Taliban now has access to over $85 billion worth of U.S. weapons that we once provided to Afghan security forces. House Democrats are pushing through a second voting rights bill after their first attempt failed in the Senate. Mississippians ordered to isolate amid one of the most severe COVID surges the state has experienced. Otherwise, face fines or even jail time. Cuomo granted clemency to 6 people during his last moments as New York governor. One of them is the San Francisco district attorney's father, a convicted murderer. President Biden is keeping the August 31st deadline for withdrawing U.S. troops from Afghanistan. He determined that the risk of Taliban retaliation is too high. Here's NTD's Kevin Hogan with an update from the Pentagon and Biden's remarks.
I'm determined to ensure that we complete our mission, this mission. The G7 leaders and the leaders of the EU, NATO, and the UN all agreed that we will stand united in our approach to the Taliban. We agreed the legitimacy of any future government depends on the approach it now takes to uphold international obligations, including to prevent Afghanistan from being used as a base for terrorism.
Evacuations are ramping up as Biden decides to stick to the timeline of pulling out U.S. forces from Afghanistan by the end of the month. The Pentagon said in the last 24 hours, the U.S. military has evacuated about 12,700 personnel.
On top of that, 57 coalition and partner aircraft left Kabul aircraft with 8,900 personnel. This tremendous display of teamwork and focus resulted in a passenger count of 21,600.
And providing extra shelter, food, and water. However, the Pentagon acknowledges that there are terrible conditions at the Qatar base temporarily being used to house Afghan evacuees. The Al Udeid Air Base is one of the primary destinations for evacuation flights from Kabul. According to Axios, leaked emails show the base is rife with human excrement and has a rat infestation.
Nobody here wants anyone to be less than safe, secure, comfortable, and well cared for as they go through this process.
The White House defended President Biden's decision to withdraw all troops by the end of the month against criticism that the move signals the U.S. is giving in to Taliban threats. The White House press secretary restated that the U.S. is on track to finish its mission by the deadline and that Biden has asked the DoD to make contingency plans if they become necessary. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
How many American weapons have fallen to the hands of the Taliban? With Afghan security forces collapsing, the militant group now has access to more Black Hawk helicopters than most countries in the world.
Top House Republicans reveal that the Taliban now have access to over $85 billion worth of U.S. military equipment in Afghanistan. The figures are based on the amount the U.S. provided to the Afghan forces while training and assisting them and on what U.S. troops left behind.
That includes 75,000 vehicles, over 200 airplanes and helicopters, over 600,000 small arms and light weapons. The Taliban now has more Black Hawk helicopters than 85% of the countries in the world.
Congressman Jim Banks goes on to say that the Taliban don't have just weapons. They also have high-end American technologies like night vision goggles, body armor, and security devices.
Is that the Taliban now has biometric devices, which have the fingerprints, eye scans, and the biographical information of the Afghans who helped us over the last 20 years.
And Republicans learned from the briefing that the Biden administration has no plan to account for or recover the weapons. Banks says Republicans will fight for a plan to account for the weapons when they go through the National Defense Authorization Act markup next week. But he's not concerned just about the Taliban.
It's that we know that al-Qaeda and ISIS-K still exist and are growing in Afghanistan, and eventually they acquire these weapons.
Congressman Jake Ellzey dismisses the claim that the Taliban won't be able to fly the Black Hawk helicopters. He also points out it's not just terrorist groups that can potentially access these weapons.
We have enemies and adversaries throughout the world, such as China, Russia, and Iran, who are more than capable of either buying those and flying them again or outright stealing them. Keep in mind that China and Russia have aircraft that look remarkably similar to our Generation 5 F-22 and F-35, and there's a good reason for that. Either they copied them or they stole them outright.
House Republicans are calling on President Biden to extend the August 31st deadline and stay in Afghanistan until every American is safely evacuated. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says it's clear from the congressional briefing that it's impossible to bring every American home by that deadline. He also says the U.S. should not have to follow instructions from the Taliban on what to do.
And it's not just Republicans calling on President Biden to push back the August 31st deadline. House Democrats also agree that it's unrealistic to evacuate all Americans and Afghan allies in only a week.
We have a moral obligation to make sure we are standing by our Afghan partners and our allies, protecting American citizens, and that moral obligation does not have a deadline. We must do everything necessary, regardless of the deadline at the end of the month. We must extend that and get the mission done. The deadline is when the mission is accomplished and we bring our people home.
Democratic Congressman Tom Malinowski says Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and General Mark Milley were being very candid during the congressional briefing. They did not dispute that the U.S. can't get everyone out by the deadline. Malinowski says there has been and remains an overwhelming bipartisan consensus that this cannot be done by August 31st. And 13 House Democrats also signed an open letter to Biden Monday asking him to extend the deadline. And there are many questions surrounding the Afghan military and why it fell so quickly to the Taliban. NTD's Jason Perry found out more behind the sudden collapse in an exclusive interview with a Navy reservist and veteran of the war in Afghanistan.
Petty Officer Michael Castleberry said he saw no obvious signs that the Afghan military would give in to the Taliban.
To fight along with us, because there's a couple of times where we got in TICs, which is troops in contact, where we would fight along next to the Afghan army, and they seemed like they were actually, ready to go, and they seemed like they had a reason to fight.
One of the interpreters Castleberry worked with in Afghanistan immigrated to the United States in 2014. That interpreter visited Castleberry recently and gave him some news of why the Taliban was able to take over so quickly.
He came by and we were just talking about it, and he actually said that he talked to his cousin, who's still back in Afghanistan, in Ghazni, and his cousin said the troops there were told, do not fight. They were told by, and I was like, are you serious? And he's like, yeah. I said, well, it's kind of funny because you don't hear that on the news. You don't, that their leadership told them do not fight against the Taliban. That's why you don't see any, you didn't see any troops or anybody. That's why it was so fast for them to overtake a lot of those districts.
Castleberry was watching the news with his father recently when he saw a scene of forward operating base Ghanzi in Afghanistan. He was once deployed there. Where the American and Polish flags used to be raised up, now had Taliban flags flying overhead. The Navy reservist was hurt to see that, and he said it felt like a kick to the stomach. He said it's hard not to feel like those who died for nothing, but he has a message for troops who are taking it pretty hard.
Confide in each other, because right now that's all we have is each other. And I tell you, the closest family that I've had in a long time were those guys that I served with over there. And we went through a lot. Luckily, thank God, we didn't lose anybody while we were out there. Unfortunately, we did have one that committed suicide when they got back home. But, and a lot of that is still, it sticks with you. And it's to just find something that you could do to to take your mind off of it. I tell people, hey, just stay away from the news.
According to a study done by Boston University, about 4 times as many troops have died by suicide than in actual combat in post 9/11 war operations. Jason Perry, NTD News.
House Democrats are pushing to pass another voting rights bill after their first bill was blocked when met with Republican opposition in the Senate. The new voting law could pass the House as early as tonight. Some House Republicans have already knocked down this bill, saying it's an unconstitutional government overreach. NTD's Melina Weisskopf speaks with a legal fellow at the Heritage Foundation to learn more about it.
The second attempt to pass a voting rights bill initiated by House Democrats is an effort to give federal government more control over state and local elections. Democrats supporting the bill say this is necessary in order to combat voter discrimination among minority groups.
We need federal oversight. Yes. If it wasn't for federal oversight, we not only would not have gotten the Voting Rights Act, we wouldn't have gotten the Civil Rights Act.
That's right, that's right.
In this new voter bill is another attempt to expand mail-in voting, legalize ballot harvesting, ban voter ID throughout the nation, and use American tax dollars to fund congressional campaigns.
It would essentially require pre-clearance, require state and local governments to get permission from the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. before they enacted a whole host of even minor changes to their election rules and processes.
Smith says giving the Department of Justice this level of power over state election laws is a dangerous precedent to set, because he says officials who are working in the Department of Justice are unelected officials, meaning that voters have no way to hold them accountable.
Not only are they unelected and unaccountable to the voters, but they tend to draw the lawyers in that section from left-leaning advocacy groups. And unfortunately, those lawyers appear to want to continue their advocacy work at the Department of Justice.
H.R. 4 goes even further, negating 2 Supreme Court election law decisions. The first, Brnovich versus Democratic National Committee, which was earlier this year. Arizona won, with the Supreme Court upholding Arizona's right to ban vote harvesting. H.R. 4 would undo that. It also aims to strengthen the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Old battles have become new again. A voter ID has been declared a provision that can dilute the vote.
But in 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that this was no longer an issue and that the federal government doesn't need to step in to prevent voter discrimination, since voter discrimination is no longer deemed as a threat like it was in the 1960s.
That formula was originally enacted in 1965 based on voter turnout data, voter registration data from 1965, which is vastly different from what the situation on the ground is today.
Smith says this is proven by looking at the voter census data, where voter turnout among minorities has progressed sharply upwards over the years, especially between 2014 and 2018, as shown in this Pew Research chart. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Mississippi is dealing with one of the worst CCP virus surges it's had so far. Recently, the state's renewed an order saying Mississippians should isolate if they test positive. Those who don't could be fined or even isolated behind bars. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story.
Mississippi has renewed a severe isolation order. If you test positive for COVID-19, you need to isolate. If you don't, expect a fine or jail time.
This is not a new order. This is an order that we released back in 2020. This was a reissue of the same order that's been out there to remind individuals of the seriousness of COVID, and that if you are infected, the best way to limit transmission is to isolate yourself, is to keep yourself away from other individuals.
The order says COVID-19 positive Mississippians need to isolate for 10 days. This includes K-12 students who must be excluded from class to isolate. Violators face up to $5,000 fines, 5 years in jail, or both. We don't know how many people have already violated this order and others like it. Neither the governor's office nor the attorney general have gotten back to us. Now, there will be exceptions.
And certainly there can be exceptions for seeking treatment, and that's part of the process.
Mississippi's undergoing another surge, one of the worst surges yet, the highest daily positive cases and hospitalizations with COVID-19 they've reported in the pandemic. And the vast majority of people testing positive, being hospitalized, and dying are not vaccinated or partially vaccinated. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
The FDA has now fully approved the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, but that hasn't quelled concerns. Some experts and lawmakers are questioning the validity of the approval process since the FDA's data isn't publicly available. NTD's Grace Coulter has the story.
Republican Congressman Chip Roy tells NTD he thinks the FDA's approval was political, not scientific. He says that's because the process was rushed and there needs to be more thorough research, and that he thinks the vaccine was approved in order to impose mandates.
We ought to allow the American people to decide. And, having this FDA rush process and push by the government is purposeful. And it's purposeful so they can try to get to the place of more mandates, more requirements, more forced actions for us to have to do what the government tells us to do rather than us deciding what's best for our families.
Both Pfizer and the FDA have expressed hope that the approval will boost confidence in the vaccine. But some health professionals say the FDA's lack of transparency could actually hurt confidence. Dr. Linda Wasilla from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy is one of them.
The public does not know the data that the FDA actually evaluated in their approval. We don't have all of that available publicly.
In particular, Wasilla points to the FDA's decision to skip a formal advisory committee meeting before approval.
Often when we have approval meetings, they are open to the public or at least discussed at what we call the VRBPAC meeting of the Food and Drug Administration holds. We were alerted by spokespeople from Peter Mark's office at the FDA that there would be no public meetings.
Wasilla has been closely following the development of the COVID-19 vaccines. She was part of a group of scientists, clinicians, and health advocates that petitioned the FDA to refrain from fully approving any vaccine this year in order to gather more data. Another signatory of the petition has also raised concerns about transparency. Days before the FDA approved the Pfizer vaccine, Kim Witzak, a consumer representative on an FDA advisory committee, commented on this issue. She told a medical trade journal that the FDA's decision to not hold the meeting removed an important mechanism for scrutinizing data and building public trust. In addition, Wasilla says specifically the FDA hasn't published the data from the control group or the biodistribution data. She also questions the timing of the approval and says it was too fast.
The timing seems to be more politically motivated, perhaps, as a school year comes upon us, than actually data-driven. And as a data person, that's what I like to see, and that's what my fellow colleagues like to see as well.
NTD reached out to the FDA for comment, but they didn't get back to us before airtime. Wasilla says she hopes the FDA makes the data public so that people can evaluate for themselves the vaccine's safety and efficacy. Grace Coulter, NTD News.
You remember those vaccine lotteries that a few states held to ramp up vaccinations? Well, the last checks have been passed out in Michigan, but those millions of dollars weren't as enticing as they hoped for. NTD's Miguel Moreno has the governor's response.
Congratulations, Christine! Thank you.
That's Christine Duvall, the winner of a $2 million check, one of Michigan's vaccine lottery prizes. About $5 million in cash and scholarships were given to lucky people who got the shot in July. Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer says it went well.
Thanks to the efforts of so many and every Michigander who got their shot, the My Shot to Win sweepstakes has been a success.
But they missed their mark by more than half. The state aimed to raise the vaccination rate by about 9% to reach a state vaccination total of 70%. However, those $5 million weren't as enticing as they hoped for, only bumping up the total in July by about 2%. Surprisingly, more people were vaccinated the month before without the lottery. Not by a lot, but still more. One of the scholarship winners told officials why he got vaccinated.
I got vaccinated because, well, my mom, as mentioned earlier, has MS, and getting the vaccine would make me be able to protect her from any other thing besides what she's going through right now, and protecting everyone around me. So, yeah, it was good getting the vaccine.
There were dozens of other winners. Michigan says the lottery prizes were paid for with a portion of the coronavirus relief funds from the federal government. Miguel Moreno, NTD News.
And up next, during her first day as New York Governor, Kathy Hochul vows to take swift action against the Delta variant. She announces new mask and vaccine mandates in schools and says New Yorkers can expect more vaccine requirements soon. And thanks to New York City's newest attraction, you can now see Times Square from above. But the pop-up site is not going to stay around for good. Kathy Hochul has been officially sworn in as governor of New York. And in her first hours on the job, she announced new school mask mandates. She also said she'll work to require vaccination or weekly virus testing for all school staff. Here she is in her first remarks to the state as governor.
None of us want a rerun of last year's horrors with COVID-19. Therefore, we will take proactive steps to prevent that from happening. Priority number one, we get children back to school and protect the environment so they can learn and everyone is safe. We need to require vaccinations for all school personnel with an option to test out weekly, at least for now. I'm also immediately directing the Department of Health to institute universal masking for anyone entering our schools.
She said New York's launching a back-to-school COVID-19 testing program to make testing for students and staff widely available. Hochul also pledged to get the state ready to distribute vaccine booster shots and reopen a number of mass vaccination sites. She said New Yorkers can expect new vaccine requirements, but she didn't provide any details. In addition, Hochul promised to swiftly tackle an application bottleneck that's been keeping federal aid money from reaching renters financially impacted by lockdowns. She's expected to announce more new policies later this week. And one of the acts of the former New York governor was granting clemency to 6 people. One of them is the San Francisco district attorney's father, who was a convicted murderer. Here's more from NTD's Eileen Ang.
During his last years in office, former New York Governor Cuomo granted clemency to the driver of a fatal 1981 armored truck robbery. The driver's son is currently San Francisco's DA, Chesa Boudin. He lobbied Cuomo for his father's release earlier this year. David Gilbert, 76, was sentenced to 75 years in prison for taking part in a $1.6 million theft that killed a guard and 2 police officers in New York. He is locked up at a correctional facility in upstate New York. Now Gilbert will be referred to the state parole board for potential release. In a tweet, Boudin said his heart is bursting and that his father never intended to harm. He also posted a photo of him on his father's back. Gilbert was imprisoned when Boudin was 3. When he was campaigning for DA, Boudin described mass incarceration as devastating and aimed to reform the criminal justice system. At the San Francisco DA debate in 2019, Boudin promised to reduce crime, empower victims, and prevent future crime.
I want to make sure that every victim of every crime has a voice, that we're reaching out, contacting victims within 48 hours of initiating our case. I want to make sure that we're not letting dangerous people back on the streets just because they pay bail or have some other connection to power.
Boudin faced a recall this year for his failure of restorative justice and the need to return to actual justice, not a social experiment. During his time in office, there has been an increase in burglaries, motor vehicle thefts, and homicides. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
And Cuomo was stripped of his 2020 Emmy Award following his resignation and sexual harassment scandal. The International Academy of Television Arts and Sciences originally gave him the award for his leadership during the pandemic and for calming people. But now the awarding body says his name and any reference to his receiving the award will be eliminated from International Academy materials going forward. And New York City is full of exciting attractions that can keep you busy while visiting. Now there's one more. NTD's Arian Pazdar visited the newest tourist site.
That's right, a huge Ferris wheel in the middle of Times Square. This thing is going to allow you to see the crossroads of the world from a whole new perspective. I mean, it stands at 110 feet tall, so the view from up there must be pretty cool. But we can't show you yet, as it's going to open to the public on Wednesday at noon. The attraction, which is around 10 stories high, is meant to send the message that New York City is back from the pandemic. Its main goal is to attract more tourists, and those we spoke with like the idea.
I mean, sure, I'd go on it.
Yeah, I think seeing Times Square from above, I don't know, seeing all the lights at night, that would be pretty cool.
I will come here again at nighttime.
The ride is 12 minutes long, and if you want to ride it, you have to book a ticket on timesquarewheel.nyc. Time slots are available every 30 minutes, and a ride costs $20, which might be a bit much for some.
But I'm like, I'd pay $10, maybe. I was gonna say 10 is my max. So.
That's like $20.
Oh, hell no.
That's a bit pricey.
Organizers say it's a sensory overload by billions of pixels as you soar through a canyon of spectacular billboards. Each gondola can hold up to 6 people, and there is no weight or height limit. The Times Square wheel isn't going to stay here forever. It's scheduled to be open for the next 3 weeks, every day from noon to midnight. After that, you might not get another chance to catch this view. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, California police found hundreds of allegedly stolen ballots in a car in California, along with a gun and drugs. The unnamed suspect has been released and may face charges. And parents in California are rallying against mask mandates for students. They've been at it for months, and the latest rally was at a school board meeting in Los Angeles County. More in just a moment here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hi, I'm John Fiorentino, inventor of the Moon Pod, the most comfortable beanbag on the planet. The first beanbag was created in 1969, and it was just a clump of cheap foam stuffed inside of a shapeless cloth. So about 50 years later, I reinvented the beanbag. Moon Pod uses zero-gravity custom bead technology that instantly adapts to your individual body shape. With its 3 dynamic relaxation positions, Moon Pod is unlike anything you've ever felt before. So join us today and experience Moon Pod, the most comfortable place in the universe.
How prepared is your family if a tornado shows up at your doorstep, or a flood, or a hurricane? You can't just turn away a natural disaster. That's why it's important to go to ready.gov/plan now. It has the tools and tips you need to make an emergency plan with your family. So if disaster comes knocking, let's go. You'll be ready to help keep your family safe.
It's just a pizza.
Yes. Make a plan today.
90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The mission of the Epoch Times is to chase the truth, to ground all statements in facts, and prevent people from being misled. This is a battle between truth and deceit. Subscribe today and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. We'd love to have you on board.
California law enforcement found more than 300 mail-in ballots in a man's car last week. The police allege the ballots are stolen and may be for the state's upcoming recall election. The suspect may face charges.
The Torrance Police Department in the Los Angeles metropolitan area informed the public in a Facebook post that officers responded to a male subject passed out in a vehicle in the 7-Eleven parking lot. Police discovered that the man was a felon. They also found hundreds of mail-in ballots in the back seat. They also found methamphetamine, a loaded firearm, multiple driver's licenses, and credit cards in other people's names. A police spokesperson told the Epoch Times that the ballots were not opened, but will remain at the department as evidence. Police said they intend to report the names on the ballots to the Los Angeles Election Office so the ballots can be reissued.
Parents in Glendora, Los Angeles held a rally to speak out against mask mandates. This is one of the many rallies that have continued throughout California in the past few months. Here's NTD's Cynthia Kai with more.
Our choice! Between 50 to 60 people gathered in front of the Glendora Unified School District Educational Center in Los Angeles, California on August 23rd. Called the Freedom Rally, attendees called for mask choice, curriculum transparency, and accountability from the school board. Before the Monday evening school board meeting, board president Zandra Borg told the San Gabriel Valley Tribune in a phone interview that, "We follow the LA County Department of Public Health and California Department of Public Health at all times. Whether we agree with it or not, that's not our charge." However, rally attendees said mandates go against people's freedom of choice.
It should be a choice. It's against our civil liberties and rights for anybody, but ourselves to give any kind of right to tell us what we should be putting on our face, in our bodies, what we should be dictated to learn. We should have the choice in that.
Rigoli said he does not agree with the push for CRT curriculums and vaccine mandates.
I mean, we're talking about, new legislation that's being drawn up by this gentleman in New York that's saying that we need to have passports for in-state travel. That's ridiculous.
One parent attending the rally said she should be able to decide what's best for her children.
I like this saying, I don't co-parent with the government. I make the best decisions for my children. They have all their other vaccinations. They eat nice, balanced, healthy diets. Let me decide about my kids' health.
Another said her child and other students can't focus in class with masks.
And as the professional, I'm a contractor. I'm trained in PPE, particulates, that's part of my job, to know what the masks do and don't do. They have limitations, they don't work. I know so many people who have COVID now who are vaccinated, wore their mask, did what they were told to do, and yet they're still sick.
Others said they simply want more transparency from government and health officials.
People are smart enough, if they're given the information, the true, actual facts, you get a lot of cooperation. People wouldn't be out here protesting if they had the actual facts presented to them and not being obfuscated.
During the meeting, board member Corey Ellenson suggested the board look into what the consequences would be if the school district goes against county health guidelines. Board member Elizabeth Reuter agreed with parents, expressing disappointment in starting the school year with wearing masks. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
Mexican scientists have developed a unique system for improving water quality. The secret ingredient is the nanobubble.
Southern Mexico City is known for its famous canals. They're the last remnants of a vast water transport system built by the Aztecs. But the water quality in Mexico City is considered poor, and supplies are often at the mercy of routine droughts. Now a team of researchers has developed a method that uses solar energy to activate a pump that sends nanobubbles into the water. These tiny bubbles bring a number of benefits.
Like a cleaner air because we have less pollutants in the atmosphere. The flora and fauna will also be benefited because the water will have more oxygen.
Southern Mexico City is known for chinampas, floating beds of farm produce originally cultivated by the Aztecs in the 14th century to feed the pre-Hispanic city. The nanobubble system helps local farmers to get more out of their chinampas.
Everything is cleaner, including air, water, soil, because when the soil is watered with clean water, it will produce better quality products.
The research team said the nanobubble system is also used in 2 water treatment plants. It could potentially be replicated in other waterways in Mexico City as well.
The labor shortage is forcing fast food chain Chick-fil-A to close some of its locations. Restaurants are bidding for staff, and now you might find empty shelves in the supermarket again. NTD's Don Ma has the details.
Chick-fil-A had to close some of its locations because of a worker shortage. In a Facebook post, one restaurant in Alabama writes that it's in the middle of a job crisis. According to the post, it's receiving far fewer job applications than normal. And it's not the only business that reports issues with staffing. The shortage has led to a bidding war for staff, especially in the restaurant industry. Mayor Gov't, vice president of operations at Seasons Kosher Supermarket, says he had to cut back on service because of the shortage. But his staff still has to offer more help than usual.
Yeah, we keep the same store hours and just everyone just putting in more work. So over the summer, where normally people would take a break and maybe slow down a little bit, cut back some of the hours, they're not able to this year.
On top of grocery chains battling supply challenges, now CEO of Roos's Markets says that he's running low on everything from pet food to canned goods. Gov't said he has seen this issue as well.
I had a conversation with an account supervisor over at Pepsi in New York a couple of days back, and he said they're having a hard time finding people to load the trucks. So there might be product that's produced, but they can't get it onto the trucks.
Cheryl Cherico, CEO of Tier 3 MD, an IT service firm, is also running into staffing shortages. She says that she has trouble finding people who are willing to work at the office, something that is necessary for her company because of the collaborative work. Sumir Meghani, CEO of InstaWork, says that one of the reasons is that workers are now looking for flexible work schedules.
The most important thing is businesses recognizing internally that the future of work is offering flexibility in a form that workers appreciate, that they're also able to support, and designing their internal operations to enable that.
Executives in the food retail industry say that they expect those disruptions to last until 2022. Gov't hopes that the end of the unemployment benefits will make a difference to his staffing shortage. Don Ma, NTD News.
Coming up, Beijing coming after a bold social media post. In it, a Malaysian singer derides Beijing's totalitarian rule, comparing it to that of the Taliban's. And we bring you a unique Airbnb in Normandy. An innovative host has converted an old World War II bunker into a residence instead of letting it fall prey to erosion. More in just a moment here on NTD News. Territorial conflict in the South China Sea has been a regional flashpoint for years. Commenting on the situation, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris spoke in Singapore Tuesday. She blamed Beijing for endangering peace in the contested region. Here's more.
We know that Beijing continues to coerce, to intimidate, and to make claims to the vast majority of the South China Sea.
In a speech on Tuesday, Vice President Kamala Harris accused Beijing of coercion and intimidation in the South China Sea. She made the comment while visiting Singapore, the first stop on her Southeast Asia trip. Harris called the Chinese Communist regime's claims in the disputed waters unlawful.
Beijing's actions continue to undermine the rules-based order and threaten the sovereignty of nations. The United States stands with our allies and partners in the face of these threats.
She referred to a landmark international arbitration in 2016, which denied the Chinese regime's territorial claims in the South China Sea. But Beijing rejected the ruling. In recent years, the Chinese regime has been rapidly building up its military presence to support its claims in the region. Harris sought to reassure America's friends and like-minded nations in the Indo-Pacific.
The United States will pursue a free and open Indo-Pacific that promotes our interests and those of our partners and allies.
Her speech also touched on a number of other issues, including the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan. She insisted the decision was courageous and right.
And Harris's flight to Vietnam was delayed several hours due to a possible anomalous health incident in Hanoi. This term is typically used by the government to refer to the mysterious Havana syndrome that sickened numerous U.S. officials over the years. Harris's spokesperson told reporters the vice president is fine and that the delay had nothing to do with her health. And the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, is retaliating against a Malaysian singer after he posted online mocking the regime's authoritarian rule and comparing it to the Taliban.
A social media post titled 8 Tips for the Taliban made a splash in China last week. The post's author, a Malaysian singer, appears to be comparing the Chinese regime's totalitarian rule to that of the Taliban. But it didn't take too long for Chinese authorities to take notice. They quickly suspended his account on Weibo, a popular Chinese social media platform. The post ironically proposes what the Taliban must do to hold on to power in Afghanistan. But the steps outlined exactly match Beijing's tactics for maintaining control. The post first suggests that the Taliban block foreign websites like Facebook, YouTube, and Google. Then it advises setting up Taliban-run news websites and social media apps. That's so citizens will only have access to news produced by the Taliban, with no outside information or influence. The post also ironically proposes establishing concentration camps and black jails. These suggestions echo many of the Chinese regime's strategies that have been in play for years, from its internet censorship firewall to its persecution of prisoners of conscience, to its suppression of ethnic minorities in China's northwestern Xinjiang region. But the post doesn't stop there. Next is that the Taliban should create a giant statue of its leader and place it at the gates of the presidential palace. That's on top of putting up slogans in the streets and brainwashing students through their schools. During China's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, authorities came up with an endless stream of propaganda slogans. At the same time, China also saw a nationwide trend of building statues idolizing former communist leader Mao Zedong. What's more, the post advises the Taliban to urge citizens to attack criticism of authorities online, a prospect that bears a striking resemblance to China's so-called 50 Cent Army, a group of state-backed internet users paid to praise Beijing and its policies online while attacking anyone who questioned or criticized the regime. What more does the Taliban need to do? According to the post, it should pay foreigners to sing patriotic songs about Afghanistan and make patriotic movies. While in China, 2 films called Wolf Warrior 2 and Operation Red Sea swept the country's box office in recent years and received massive attention on social media.
China is taking the opportunity of American troops leaving Afghanistan to criticize the U.S., but the U.S. pullout could cause trouble for China. The regime may be worrying about the chaos in Afghanistan reaching Pakistan, its partner in a major infrastructure project. NTD's Don Ma has more.
As instability worsens in Afghanistan, is China growing worried for its international infrastructure projects? Beijing's controversial global project has been criticized for trapping developing countries in heavy debt. It's called the Belt and Road Initiative. Neighboring Afghanistan is the South Asian country Pakistan. Beijing has invested heavily in the country as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. In fact, out of all the Belt and Road countries, Beijing invested in the most in Pakistan, reportedly around $63 billion. The stakes are high, so a chance that the chaos in Afghanistan could reach Pakistan may not have gone unconsidered by Beijing. China has not forgotten about the suicide bombing that was carried out at a hotel where the Chinese ambassador was staying. It's also unlikely that China has forgotten about the attack on a bus in the country last month. A blast targeting a bus killed 9 Chinese Belt and Road workers who were employed in building a hydroelectric dam. The project was valued at around $4 billion. Earlier this month, Pakistan had blamed the attack on the Taliban. A China relations analyst at American think tank Rand Corporation says that there could be some tension between China and Pakistan if they don't figure out the Taliban terrorist situation.
There could be a fair amount of tension between China and Pakistan, who are normally, very okay with each other or the best of friends, if they can't get this terrorism problem resolved. If Pakistan is not willing to leverage its relationship with the Taliban for counterterrorism purposes in the way that China sees fit, then China and Pakistan may have some issues as well.
Beijing doesn't want its failed Belt and Road project in Venezuela 6 years ago to repeat again in Pakistan. China had invested billions in Venezuela, hoping that the country could repay it with their oil. But in 2014 and 2015, various oil commodity prices plunged, and China suffered huge losses. Don Ma, NTD News.
More than 800 migrants crossed the English Channel in 30 small boats on a single day over the weekend, a new record for the current crisis. NTD's Anna Rodriguez brings us this report.
828 people made the dangerous journey across the English Channel on Saturday, setting a new daily record. The Home Office confirmed on Monday that 30 migrant boats succeeded in reaching the UK that day. The new record is over 200 more than the previous daily record, which was set less than 2 weeks ago. So far this year, more than 12,000 people have crossed the Channel to the UK. The migrant crossing have increased despite repeated vows by the Home Office to make the route unviable. The sea journey has claimed many lives. Earlier this month, a 27-year-old man from Eritrea died after jumping overboard as his boat started to sink. A Home Office spokesman says these dangerous crossings from safe EU countries are completely unnecessary, and we are determined to take down the evil criminal gangs behind them. He says the UK government is working with France and other countries to tackle this issue. Anna Rodriguez, NTD News.
Resin collectors from the Greek island of Evia have been left destitute, and many are facing an uncertain future. This comes as vast swaths of pine forests were destroyed by wildfires earlier this month. NTD's Kostas Menas brings us more on this.
Christos Livas worries about making ends meet for his 4 children. He's a resin collector on the Greek island of Evia. Tens of thousands of hectares were reduced to ashes there earlier this month. Greece was hit by some of the worst fires in decades.
Those that ran with resin we didn't cut. We cut the useless trees for our homes, for wood, and we'd sell some for firewood. For now, it's finished. Everything has turned to ash.
The forest has been destroyed for generations to come. Most of Livas's livelihood has literally gone up in smoke.
Maybe there are some pines left over there towards the south. Who will go there first? And just to fuel you need to go. You go to Prokopi to tap all the way from here? It's not worth the fuel you'll use to go by car. You won't make a wage. Now we who are left here, we're doomed.
Livas used to supplement his income by farming and logging. Now there are no more trees to log. Without much education, he may not be able to find work to support his family. Other families were hit even worse.
It's not the future. It's what we see. When you've been living something for 50 years and now you see this thing, this charcoal, okay, it's...
Andonis Natsios started working as a resin collector at age 12. He learned the technique from his father, who learned it from his father. He's now 51 with 3 children, 2 of them in university.
Nothing is left. If only 10 acres were left, I don't know, 50, 10, so I can see woodland. For me to see woodland now, I have to go to Perdion to Areos Park in central Athens. There is nothing left.
In Greece, 80% of pine resin and 70% of pine honey comes from Evia. But the devastation means neither of these will be produced for several decades. The government has vowed to compensate those affected. But the resin collectors of Evia say nothing can make up for the loss of their livelihoods for decades to come. Kostas Menas, NTD News.
On the Normandy beaches in France, the World War II bunkers are slowly disappearing with the passage of time. Some are removed by local officials, some are half buried in the sand. One bunker had a different fate, though. A local man decided to restore it and turn it into an Airbnb rental. Let's take a look.
It's impossible to miss these bunkers when walking along the Normandy beaches. Every 100 yards, these concrete shelters are one of the only physical remains left of what happened here 76 years ago. On the morning of June 6, 1944, 156,000 troops landed in Normandy, including 78,000 American soldiers. As time passes, some of the bunkers have become eroded or half buried in the sand, like this one that once operated as a radar station to detect planes. But one bunker seems to have found a new life.
Bonjour, bienvenue au bunker.
Step by step, Serge Collieu, a bunker enthusiast, bought up a plot of land in the area and spent 18 months digging out and renovating the 4,300 square foot bunker.
It mostly was difficult for the craftsmen. The digger especially had a lot of work.
the electrician as well. Otherwise, we did everything ourselves.
The bunker has been turned into a fully functioning rental, complete with a bar area and cozy living room. It's now a home away from home for French visitors and foreigners, including Germans.
We adapted the bunker while preserving a certain feel. We wanted to give the building a second life, so we are not going to live in the past forever.
The site, now in a residential area and surrounded by houses and gardens, close to the coast, was once operated by 30 men in the German Air Force, or Luftwaffe. While some local mayors have advocated to remove the bunkers, as they can occasionally pose a danger to bathers, some guests and residents want to preserve them.
It is a moment of our history, of the history of humanity, and it is a bit sad to want to destroy all this. On the contrary, it holds memories. Our grandparents have lived through this. My parents did too.
Nods to the war are present throughout the space, with memorabilia like helmets and reproductions of guns. Although Calif said he did not want to go overboard to allow guests to enjoy it for parties too. According to an author and specialist, though some Normandy bunkers are to disappear with time, there is an ongoing trend to preserve them and have their history remembered.
Coming up, an exhibition in London celebrates the work of one of the greatest woodcarvers in British history, known as the Michelangelo of wood. And people in Greece celebrate August's full moon with cultural sites staying open late over the weekend. We'll show you the stunning footage in just a moment.
Hi folks, Joe Namath here with a new message about your Medicare benefits. You may be entitled to transportation, meals, and expanded coverage for dental work that includes extractions, fillings, and dentures, all at no additional cost. Plus, depending on your zip code, you may be entitled to the Medicare benefit that adds money to your Social Security check every single month. Call and get everything you deserve. Call now. It's free.
I'm on a fixed income, so I called to get money added to my Social Security check. They helped me so much.
I called to save money on copays, get prescriptions, transportation, and my dental work covered. I couldn't believe I was spending money I don't have to spend.
Millions of people have trusted the Medicare Coverage Helpline, and you can too. Call now. It's free.
Call 1-800-764-1930. That's 1-800-764-1930 now.
An exhibition in London celebrates the work of one of the greatest carvers in British history, and it shows how his work continues to inspire carvers today. Let's take a look.
With such exquisite detail, the flowers, the bird, and even the cherubs look like they could come alive at any moment. The man who carved it is known as the Michelangelo of wood. His name is Grinling Gibbons, and he's one of the greatest decorative carvers in British history. This year marks 300 years since he passed away, and right now an exhibition is celebrating his work. It's called Grinling Gibbons, Centuries in the Making. Curator Hannah Phillip says it's about Gibbons' legacy up to the present day, what influenced him, and how he's inspired others. She says Gibbons' carvings are almost the equivalent of still-life paintings, but in wood. Most of Gibbons' work is part of the fabric of buildings. One of the works on show is part of the choir in St. Paul's Cathedral, where a choir still sings. And the curator describes this panel in St. James Church in London, saying not only does he draw on the natural world, but he does very successfully imitate it as well. And that's clear in this tie carving imitating lace. In fact, one former owner wore it to a dinner party, and his guests thought it was the real thing. He wrote, "There is no instance of man before Gibbons who gave to wood the loose and airy lightness of flowers." The master carver was born in the Netherlands in the mid-1600s, during the Dutch Golden Age. It isn't clear who trained him, but one theory is that he took an apprenticeship with a local family of sculptors. Carving was part of the area's thriving shipbuilding industry at the time. The curator says it would have been a profession on his doorstep. He moved to England in the 1660s and eventually got royal commissions from Charles II of England, and ultimately became the king's carver for William and Mary. The curator says she hopes the exhibition can help visitors understand that Gibbons still inspires carvers to this day. The exhibition is at Bonhams in London. It ends this Friday.
Cultural institutions in Greece, such as museums and archaeological sites, were open late over the weekend. That's so the public can enjoy August's full sturgeon moon.
The full moon cast its orange glow over the marble columns of the Temple of Poseidon in Cape Sunion. It first appeared on Saturday and reached peak illumination on Sunday, according to NASA. Various cultural events are organized around Greece as part of the annual festival in honor of the August full moon, with archaeological sites and museums remaining open late into the evening. A piano concert was held on the terrace of the Acropolis Museum beneath the ancient hill, with a view to the illuminated Parthenon Temple. Moons were often given names by Native American tribes, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac. This month's full moon was referred to as the sturgeon moon, due to the sturgeon that were caught during this time in the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain of North America. Other native tribes called this moon the harvest or corn moon due to the gathering of crops at this time.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox. We have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't let YouTube decide what information you get. That's your choice. YouTube is deleting our videos and cuts you off from a source of honest reporting. Make sure you don't lose access to NTD's news content, and take a quick moment to subscribe to our newsletter so no matter what happens here, you'll keep your access to a trustworthy news source.